What do you believe are the primary reasons behind men's fear of commitment in modern dating?
Um, I would say fear typically always stems from yourself, but a lot of times we project it on other people. So I think with men, the reason they fear the commitment is based on their life experiences, whether what they saw when they grew up, and it may not have been a good example of a relationship. So now they've identified that to say, I don't want that to happen to me. So they are more protective of trying to engage in a relationship with somebody else. Or it may be that they've had their own personal experience in a relationship that did not go well. And so then they have a tendency, like most people do, to carry that negative aspect of what happened in that relationship, because typically we blow up the negative and not necessarily, and we kind of minimize the good things. And so when we're carrying around that negative experience, then we're going to apply that to a lot of times to every relationship that we're in, to a degree. So I think that's why they fear it. They fear that the relationship itself won't be successful. So if I never put 100% in the game, then I can't get hurt. So that's kind of why I think that they fear the relationship.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Luis, are there common misconceptions about men and commitment that you like to debunk?
Yeah, I would like to actually have a list of things that I would like to kind of debunk. First and foremost, excuse my hoarse voice at the moment. Men are exposed to commitment from a very young age. We have to really remind ourselves and think back on our childhood and the things that we've seen, experienced, and the things that we've grown into, especially going and ushering into adulthood. You know, we've been exposed to commitment in the sense of friends when we were young, right? Sports, hobbies and interests, work. Men are committed to routine. Every young man needs a routine, a constant routine. Work, school, work out, read, etc. You know what I'm saying? Routine is something that you should be committed to. Young men have to be committed to because that right there is what allows you to, bear the most fruit out of your results. If he's religious or spiritual, there is a commitment to faith. I would argue that, if that man has a deep seated root in his faith, there is a level of commitment with him and God. I believe what has happened is that commitment nowadays in our popular culture society is tied too often to happiness, right? And some people will forego their commitment in order to chase the pursuit of happiness. And that right there creates a very turmoil dichotomy for both parties, not only for men in their future, but also for the women who receive sort of the back end of what these men's shortcomings have become. Commitment starts at the home. You know, um, I think fear is a roadblock, or better yet, a seed that has been planted by outside forces to create doubt in your mind. That's what I believe what has happened. You know, um, Men are generally much more willing to go skydiving, do more crazy things, and are more risk avert. Right? I think that when we talk about this in the sense of commitment, we have to also play in mind is that men are not fearful of commitment. They're just more, um, they're a little bit more cautious in terms of who they give the commitment to, right? You rather just get it right the first time and obviously learn along the way. But I think that commitment tends to kind of be, small stepping stones. And we have these conversations about how people come together, how they meet, and then where they at. And we forget all the important journey in the middle of understanding that development. You're committed to the consistency. You're committed to the person. You're committed to what you say that you are. You got to stand on business about who you are. And that right there is a form of commitment as well. And I will say, lastly, There's nothing to fear but fear itself. I think far too often we tend to allow little things to kind of cloud our decision making. But when you spend enough time by yourself, you can understand clearly what are the things that you ought to be committing to and what things you should be allowing to fall by the wayside. So that's all I got.
Okay.
That was well said, Luis. I agree with everything you just said. The only thing I would really add is that a lot of men may not have seen successful marriages. So that's fear too. If you haven't seen other people successfully do something, you're like, maybe I can't do this. I don't see any examples of this going well. That's fear. That's all I want to add, but I like everything you just said.
All right. Before I move on, anybody want to say
And,
anything?
and just to piggyback off what Herb was saying, that's the reason why it's more important to be spiritually connected with your woman, because if you basing off all of your movement or whether you want to decide on whether you want to commit based on evidence or having some representation or seeing it through other people, and if you don't have that luxury of being able to see it through other people, just living in the word and being spiritually, driven in your life, you will see that the scriptures and the word are telling you to get married, and there's scriptures that can help you and guide you through marriage if you find somebody that's equally yoked. And you don't really got to lean on seeing it successfully done. You just got to have faith and pray and just trust that God gonna guide you and your wife through.
Do y'all think how does I'm trying to look at this from a different perspective. Is it possible to get married without the state? Without state involvement?
It would depend on if you want it recognized or not. If you don't care about it being recognized, then I guess technically you can get married without the state, because in other countries that's what they do, right? So, or when we think about slavery, I mean, they didn't recognize our marriages at that point, but we still were married. So technically you can get married. It's more so about whether or not you want it recognized.
In Texas, you married after living together for 6 months.
So if you're with someone and they say that, why won't you commit to me? I want to marry you. And he says, okay, well, we can go and get married without the state. Should she be willing to accept that and accept it as him being committed?
I said this on the show before and got talked bad too. I like this question. Y'all can answer it. I'm gonna see what y'all say.
Go ahead, Shan.
I personally don't see a problem with it. Especially like I know different states have different laws, like she just stated, but as long as it's treated like that. Like, the problem is you can say you're married and then you end up treating it like you're dating. Like, once the going gets tough, you run out like you are dating. You don't try to work it out. It's just an easy way out. And that's the biggest problem with that. You got to really trust the other person and they have to trust you. So I would say it can with the right two people. But I think the Bible always also says, obey the law of the land. So you want to make sure that you're doing just that as well, if you're going to be biblical with it. So, yeah, I think it can work. The problem is just if you got a funny acting, fickle mate, you might not want to trust that.